voodoo magic trick I gotta do in order to see you before I leave this state? Just let me know what's the procedure to book an appointment with you.
I know that you've been waiting on me, I'm out front. I know you're sick of playing these games, I'm about done. I could turn it up a couple of thousand. Your man saying something, but he ain't about none. About none. How come? Don't talk like that when you know the outcome. She been waiting till I drop, let her play the album. Outdone, he been outdone. A lot of girls back home, but I'm thinking about one. Made rounds on my phone, but I'm leaving out someone. I 7-1 that can't run. I didn't want to say none, but I just think that this ain't what you want, girl. Can't front, girl. I can't just be with one girl, especially when you know how runs the world and it's running through my mind like whoa, through my mind like. I know that you've been waiting on me, I'm out front. I know you're sick of playing these games, I'm about done. I could turn it up a couple of thousand. Your man saying something, but he ain't about none. About none. How come? Don't talk like that when you know the outcome. She been waiting till I drop, let her play the album. Gon' play that shit. Gon' play that shit. I was thinking about you when I made that shit. Okay, me and that girl got the same accent, cause she's a hometown baby. Could you put your phone down, maybe? You been showing out lately. She just wanna spend a little quality time. I 6'5" on a late night drive and I'm going about 80. Maybe I've been going about it all wrong. Sometimes I just need someone to call on. Need someone to what I'm gonna do when they all gone. I know that you've been waiting on me, I'm out front. I know you're sick of playing these games, I'm about done. I could turn this shit up a couple of thousand. Your man saying something, but he ain't about none. About none. How come? Don't talk like that when you know the outcome. She been waiting till I drop, let her play the album. Gon' play that shit. Gon' play that shit. I was thinking about you when I made that shit. I was thinking about girl, got a girl, got a girl, got a girl. Too stylish, hey, she too fly, made me lose balance. Back it up, like we taking over, put a 99 in the 2000. The city that's mine. I need a new challenge. I can't tell if you bought it. I doubt it. Baddies at the club and they got your boy surrounded. She want me to pound it. Said she want my kids, but they grounded. I've been staying focused, got me celibate. Still working, still waking up looking for real purpose. Still trying to figure out what it's gonna take. Still trying to find connection with some real surface level types. Back when I was young, I used to pedal bikes. Now I'm riding cross country, doing several nights. In and out the Sprinter van, pull up, get the levels right. Get a bite to eat, do the show, and then we settle like what could be a better life. But I'm still staring at the ceiling in my bed at night. Think about what I don't got yet, why I'm not high yet. Why the last project was something that I thought would make me something that I'm not yet. It's all a work in progress, that's what they tell me, and I respond with I guess. I've been wanting to get something off my chest, but it's not time yet, it might never be time. My kid won't get no screen time, at least it's what I'd like to think. Cause my childhood was filled with tree climbs and oatmeal cream pies and looking at the street signs. I guess that he gon' be fine, or she will. I just feel like it's hard to be thrilled in times like this, when our hands can't keep still. And if it's not Insta, then it's emails. It's beauty in the details, so I'ma try my best to pay attention to them. Spend your day with this and it can get you through it. I ain't seen an institute since I ended schooling. Used to hate it, now my dreams take place in it. Sunshine through the blinds till I wake in it. I just got done stretching like the 8th inning. Now it's time to get something for the day's finish. Well wishes in my cell phone from my classmates that let themselves go. Well aware that I'm well known. Know we had a stretch of time between us that you felt close to me, but it's been a minute since. Did I change or did they rob me of my innocence? Inner city kids I grew up with, we had some differences, but inside gymnasiums it's almost like they didn't exist. Time's ticking, my mom's 50. Told me that she been thinking about spending time different. It's more precious. What if I took the same method at 21 and adopted it? Sometimes I feel like I'm tripping for dipping out of town where my pops living still. Palms itching, but this money has not been a drill. Ain't no pattern to the way I tend to feel. It's all over the place. I'ma lower the shades and sleep in. I ran into a kid I grew up with. He shook my hand and told me, no one thought you'd do this. I can't relate, but see, I understand. Cause when they hear me now compared to back then, it's like, who is this? Don't know if I changed, but the music did. In my old shit, I used to just admit things. Now I sit around and wonder, is that something you admit? Cause when I hear it, all I do is cringe. I guess I did change. 2 years in ATL. Before I moved, I had never got drunk. Now I'm getting towed up like a ACL. Meeting people that my friends idolize, that they only ever get a chance to see on ATL. Artists that they playing through a JBL. In somebody's basement, smoking, getting wasted. Something in the air and I can taste it. 2018, I couldn't be on my own. Every night I call a girl and fall asleep on the phone. I guess it was how I cope with leaving from home. Discipline, I gotta keep it controlled. It gets more difficult to rap every day, cause there's less and less things that feel like worth saying. Nothing is for sure except life sure ends. I tried to keep that in mind, but it's not working.
Right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Welcome to UX class. Hope y'all are doing great.
What's poppin'? Brand new whip, just hopped in.
Now, before we get started, let's go over the tech again real quick for those of y'all that didn't get it down last time. First thing, we're watching on YouTube Live, as you can see. And what I want you to do now is show me that you know how to use the chat. Show me that you know how to use that chat. It's right here. You have to be logged into YouTube to use the chat. You can make up a name if you don't want to use your real name, like you could have a name for classes and stuff. That's totally fine. I just want y'all to be able to ask questions and chat amongst yourselves and all those kinds of things. So let me know, show me that you know how to use the chat. Say what's up. Tell me how you're doing. Tell me what your favorite class is besides this class. Anything. Just let me know that you know how to use that chat. Prove it. Very good. Y'all are not the most creative chatters, but it looks like you do, in fact, know how to use chat. All right, that's great. The other thing that I want you to do is get logged into Minty. Go to minty.com, and use the code 4826478. At least 23 of you have figured out how to use it, but let's see if the rest of you can figure it out. 4826478. I like that some of y'all are actually chatting in the chat. I appreciate that. That's great. You know, we got to do the best we can to make this a real class, even though we're all virtual. So go ahead and get on to Minty. We got 29, 30 of you. At least 10 of you haven't figured out what to do yet to make it happen.
What's poppin'? Brand new whip, just hopped in. I got options.
I'll give you just another minute to log in.
Just joshing. I'm spending this holiday locked in. My body got rid of them toxins. Sports in the top 10.
All right. Hope y'all are doing great. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's really interesting that one of y'all is a creative writing minor. That is a really cool skill to have. Hope that helps you out in your career. Writing is a super important skill that you'll need to have. I wish I was a better writer. I have to write a lot of stuff, even though I'm a very technical person. Writing is very important. That's cool. All right. Anyway, today we're going to talk a little bit about prototyping. And I see that somebody's commenting on Slack, so let me make sure that y'all don't have a question on Slack. Although, of course, it's better to put questions right here, and that's great. Thanks, Oscar, for answering that question for Christian in Slack. Way to go. That is much appreciated. All right. So today we're going to just briefly talk about prototyping. We're going to talk more about prototyping later. Today we're focused on prototyping and the sketching part of prototyping. But let's talk about what types of prototyping exist in the world so that you can have a little bit of context for what we're going to be doing today, and especially on Friday when we actually do this ourselves. So, types of prototyping, where prototyping is just making what your system might look like, or kind of a model of your system without actually making your system. That's what prototyping is all about. Again, I see a question right there on the chat, which I'll try and answer real quick. And the question is, will these slides be put on Blackboard? They'll be put on Canvas. Yes, I'm going to put links from the lectures to these slides. I didn't do it for yesterday's or Monday's class yet, but I will. I put links from the syllabus right to these slides so you can review them later. And of course, you can also always watch them on YouTube Live. So even if I haven't gotten around to putting the link there, check it out on YouTube Live. There, all my lectures are there, so you can watch them as many times as you want. They're amazing, as you know. All right, types of prototyping. We have the sketch, which is something we're going to talk about today. Basically just making a sketch of what your prototype might look like. We have the idea that we could make paper interfaces, and this is obviously very similar to the sketch, but it means something a little different, because what it is it's almost like making a model of your interface that you can interact with. So it's a little more complicated. We can do things like storyboards, and these are very similar to what people use to make like TV shows, right? Like you show scene 1, something's happening, scene 2, something else is happening, scene 3, something else happens, and it walks you through how the user is actually going to use your app. So that's a little bit different. Again, it could involve drawing, but it's a little bit different. Another type of prototyping you could do is kind of more role playing, so you actually kind of act out what's going to happen. Another type, which is really only relevant if you're making physical things, is to make a physical model of the thing. So imagine that we weren't making apps, but we were making some kind of product. Again, making some kind of like physical model of it could be a way that you prototype something. Now, another way of prototyping is the Wizard of Oz. Who can guess in the chat, what does the Wizard of Oz prototyping mean? Are y'all too young to have seen the Wizard of Oz, or actually have you seen the Wizard of Oz? Let me know in the chat, what do you think Wizard of Oz prototyping is? Anybody got a guess? What is Wizard of Oz prototyping? Take a wild guess if you don't have it. All right, good guesses. Magic is a really good guess, because all right, if you've ever seen the Wizard of Oz, there's like some kind of like robot thing that the people are talking to. They think that it's a real robot, but actually it's just a man behind the curtain who is just using remote controls to control the robot. And so it's like a prototype that doesn't actually do anything. It's like actually just a person behind the scenes. A classic example of this is like a chat bot where you think you're chatting to a real computer, but then on the other end of the chat bot, it's actually just a human chatting back to you. Okay? So you would think, oh, this is a really good computer program, but in fact it's actually like somebody else chatting back to you. It's where you use the person's intelligence to replace what will eventually be coded into an app. So great answers there. Yeah, Jackson's got it. exactly. All right, so that's Wizard of Oz prototyping. That's actually a pretty powerful way to prototype. Um, we could also do user-driven prototyping, which is where you almost work with the user, the potential user, to design the app together. And of course, in prototyping, you can also use UX software, so software that allows you to design an interface, and you can get pretty in depth with the kind of prototyping here. I mean, you can make a website that almost works as it will when it's deployed, because you can use user experience software to mock up that website and then even have it respond to clicks and things like that you do. So that's a very powerful way of prototyping. But the point is, there's a lot of ways of prototyping. We're not going to talk about all of them today. We are going to focus on sketching. So just to run through again some of these examples, sketching, when I say sketching, I really mean sketching ideas, freeform sketching, things like that. Like this, where they were brainstorming on a whiteboard. But there is more formal things that you can do with paper. Like, for instance, you can make a paper prototype. The difference here, I want you to see, sketching is more like freeform and ideas, and you may use some UI elements, but it's really early stage. Paper prototype is something where it's like looks a lot closer to the app, and you may even, when you press a button on this paper page, you may actually move to another paper page, and so it's really like a paper prototype. A storyboard, as I mentioned, is where you do like scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4, scene 5, and scene 6. You kind of walk through the story. Again, it can be sketching, but it's a very different type of sketch. And of course, the others that we talked about. All right, so now you have an idea of like some ways that you can prototype. But let's talk about why in the world would we ever want to make a prototype? Get on Menti. Give me some of your ideas. Why would we bother making a prototype? Why wouldn't we just make the thing? Aren't we doing double work here? What are some reasons that you guys and gals think that we should make a prototype? I'll give you just a minute to get that in. Get them in on Menti. All right, and I see some good answers coming in, but so keep them coming. If you're still typing, that's great. I'm going to go over a few of them here. So this one says to get UX feedback before coding everything. That's a great idea. It's a lot easier to correct something that you've done on paper than to correct something that you've done in code, right? It's just a lot more effort. So you want to eliminate all your stupid mistakes early on before you actually code them. And that one right there kind of gets at this point too. You want to make sure things work and that the users understand what you're trying to do before you put in a bunch of time. Another aspect of this, click on that one, that is important is creating a shared vision. Okay, that's an interesting point that you can do with paper prototypes or sketching or whatever, is until you start drawing stuff on paper, usually what I have in my mind and what my colleague has in their mind are very different. But when you start drawing them, you have to get super concrete, and so usually you have some coming together of the ideas at that point, and you figure out what you want to make together. So that's a great point. Similarly, running it by clients, again, another great point. It's important to get your own team on the same page, but you also want to make sure that what you're going to make eventually makes the client happy. That's definitely a good idea. Let's see what else we have here. Just looking at a couple other answers. Okay, and lots of great answers here. Thanks for your answers. That makes this class a lot more fun when you actually give feedback and give answers. Most of these are correct, so that's great. I think y'all are getting the idea. Okay, so, just some concrete reasons why to prototype. It's great to communicate. We need to communicate not only with our teammates, but we need to communicate with the clients. So prototypes are great for that. The reason that we do this so early in the process, meaning the reason that we do it first, is because this type of prototype is the easiest to correct. If you go and you code up even a basic web page, it takes a lot of time compared to just drawing something on paper. So you want to get something down on paper early, and then even if you have somebody kind of fake use the paper prototype, you'll discover obvious problems really quickly before you code them. In the long run, you'll save a lot of time. In software engineering, there is kind of a famous concept that is, it's really easy to fix a problem in the early stages of things. It costs maybe like 10 times more to fix things in the middle stage, and it costs up to 100 times more to fix them in late stage. Okay, so we always want to catch problems in the early stages. It's great in this prototyping phase to get user feedback. You'll find it's very interesting that you might have designed your app in a certain way, and everybody was working together on your team to design your app, and you all think in a certain way. However, you will also find when you give your app to the first user, they will often do something completely crazy that you had never thought of, and it will either crash your app or cause it not to work, or they will be totally confused, or you will be totally confused. So it's super important not only to get feedback from your team and things like that, but from a user. So the earlier you get it into a user's hand, the less likely you are to make something that confuses users. It's great even to do kind of experimentation at this phase because, hey, it's pretty cheap to draw 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different designs. We can present the user with several different designs, or we can present different users with different designs, and we can learn, hey, this design worked really well, nobody was confused, whereas this one over here didn't work really well. However, maybe this one feature worked really well. So it's a great time to experiment because, again, it's cheap to just draw a little sketch. And again, we want to minimize mistakes in the later phases of development. So we want all our mistakes to be, ideally we want all our mistakes to be here at the beginning. We don't want them to be later on. And so we want to find them all now. All right, so that's some reasoning behind prototyping. What I want to do now is show you just a very short video about sketching. One thing that I think comes up a lot when people think about sketching is that, oh, I'm not an artist. We're at a school that's famous for having an amazing art school. And people think, oh, I'm not an artist. I can't actually sketch. So I'm not going to do that part of the project. Like, that is not valid at all. What we're talking about with sketching is just basic lines and boxes and circles, nothing complicated. It doesn't have to be pretty. This is not a piece of art yet. This is a diagram to explain your ideas, okay? And we're going to go over that a little bit in this demo of sketching video that gives you just how we, as potentially people that aren't designers or aren't professional designers yet, can sketch regardless of our artistic ability. Check it out.
A lot of times in ideation sessions, non-designers will say, I can't draw, so I can't help with ideation. But ideation happens in the early stages of design and is meant to be messy. You can use basic shapes to convey UI elements and a layout. For example, I'm going to draw a UI layout on this Post-it pad using very simple shapes. I'll start with a big rectangle, which represents my browser window. To define the navigation, I'm going to draw a line across the top and add in smaller lines for links. I'll add a rectangle with an arrow to represent a button that leads to another page. For the title of this page, I'll make a thick line to represent the heading, and then smaller lines to represent the body copy. I'll add an image by drawing a rectangle with an X through it, and start to create form fields by drawing long rectangles. I can add a caret in one of the small rectangles to signify a drop-down. And then I'll add one more button to submit the form. And in a short amount of time, without any special tools besides this marker, I've created a layout. You don't need detailed drawings or complicated software to convey an idea. A fun way to start an ideation session is with a warm-up activity to get everyone comfortable. One way you can do this is to start out by drawing a simple object that everyone knows, like a cat, for 1 minute. After the 1 minute is up, everyone shows their drawing. This gets the team comfortable by making the first show and tell drawing low pressure, and it demonstrates how one concept can be conveyed in many different ways. It's quick, it's fun, and it gets everyone ready to focus on ideation without feeling like they can't draw. Next time you're in an ideation session, start with basic shapes and feel confident that you can contribute to design ideas without a comprehensive art background.
Yeah, I couldn't draw a cat that well either. But remember, what we're drawing here is basically boxes and lines and squares and dashes. Very simple stuff. We do not need to be artists to make this happen. Okay, that's the takeaway I want you to know here. There are, I bet, I don't know for sure, but I bet there are either some art majors or some people that are pretty into art in this class. This class tends to attract those type of people. Good for you. That's great. You're going to be an important part of your team in helping it aesthetically look great. However, the people that aren't artists, it is super important for you not to just leave everything up to the artist. Depends on the artist, of course. Some artists are very technical, but artists are not always as analytical as perhaps engineers are. So user experience is really this combination of like analytical thinking and artistic thinking. Okay, we want good aesthetics on the one hand, but we also want good user experience, which comes from things making sense and things being well structured and laid out in a logical way. So we need your input as an engineer. Don't cop out and don't just check out because this is the art part of things. You need to be involved. All right, so both artist types need to look at it from kind of an analytical point of view. Analytical people need to look at it from a little bit of an artist point of view. We need both points of view if you're going to have a good looking app that functions well. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the advantages of sketching, but it's obvious that sketching is very different from having like the end product. And I want you to think about for a minute, what are the limits of sketching? Like how useful can these sketches be? Are they gonna, why do we even bother coding them up? Obviously in the end we do need to code them up, but why don't we just sketch like crazy for most of the project and then only in the very end, make this UI? I want you to think about how powerful can these sketches be and what types of things can they be used for? And then as you think about that, think about which of these cases, there may be more than one that I consider correct. What can we do with sketches? What are the limits of what we can do with sketches and what can they be used for? So get your votes in to Menti. Think about how we can use sketches. What are their limits and what types of things do you think we can use sketches for? Again, there may be more than one correct answer, of course, but let me know, what do you think we can use sketches for? So, excuse me, while your answers are coming in there, I see a question that I missed in the chat. It is, would a storyboard also be images of your app communicating with each other from one activity to another? Or is a storyboard, as we saw before, really like the story of the user interacting with the app? I think what you're talking about, so there's different types of sketches. One, of course, would be the storyboard, which is what we saw. What you're talking about, where it's actually like the pages of the app and how they link together. It's more like a layout sketch, or it is like a wireframe sketch where things are like screens are mapped together. So when you press this button, you know you go to this other page. It's really, I wouldn't call that a storyboard. I'd just call that a different type of drawing, but it's perfectly valid to make. All right, and your answers have come in. Thank you for all for answering. As you can see, sketches are good for almost everything. Of course, you can make a rough overview of them, but that's not the only thing you can do. And you can, of course, you can make a layout using them, but that's not the only thing you can do. You can also do things like create a detailed workflow of a user. You can do things like create an overview of pages in the app, and when you press this button, how you link to another button. To another page once you press that button. And so there is actually a whole lot that we can do with sketches. For instance, let's take a look at this use of sketch. Here's a use of sketch to create a paper prototype and to show us a walkthrough of one user as they use this app. Check it out. This is a really neat use of kind of paper prototyping to show how this app is going to work. All right, so that was a very short video. That was actually a video of something that people did in the context of a class. So that's definitely something that I'm considering as one of our deliverables. But you can see they did a really good job of walking you through how the user was going to use this app. And I think maybe not watching it once, but I've watched it a few times. Watching it a few times, you can really figure out, oh, that's exactly how this app is going to be designed. There's not a lot of ambiguity, even though it's just these wireframe like drawings which just give you the basic layout of things. I think after watching this a few times, you'd have a very clear idea of how this is supposed to look. Now, what kind of mental tools did this person in this group really have to do to make that sketch that we just saw? What did they have to do kind of in the background to make that? Let me know what you think on Menti. Oops. What do y'all think they were doing in their mind to make that sketch? I'm more looking for what were they doing mentally to make that sketch. Okay, we're getting in some answers. This is obviously a harder question than the one we did before. But I want to highlight a couple answers here. For instance, one of you said imagination. So what was the person using to make that sketch? They were primarily using their imagination. That's one of your key skills or key abilities that you're going to have to use You have to imagine, hey, if this app existed, what would it look like? And if I was going to do this sign up process, what would those pages look like? And you do that based on what you've seen before in other apps. But again, it's primarily a function of your imagination. Now, somebody said at the top they had to kind of like think about the user workflow. Absolutely. They were thinking of how the user flowed through the app, and they had to do things like visualize the next steps and put them together. But I think that's a really interesting example of an app that totally doesn't exist. They had to use their imagination and use what they thought the app might look for to draw each screen and the whole series of screens in order to do that particular task for that particular app. That was a pretty impressive video. All right. So what I want to do now is I want you guys and gals to go find an example of a sketch online, any kind of like sketch related to prototyping or UI or sketching a website or an app or anything related to that. And I want you to upload it to this photo gallery. And what we're going to do is we're just going to look at them afterwards. So I want you to take just a couple minutes, play music in just a second, and go get one and upload it to that directory. Go ahead. Let me see.
If you're wondering what may come from it, once May comes, then we graduate for the summer. Till then, lock in, watch the cake come from it. Pray to God we break 100, and once you get it poppin', watch the hate come from it. Chicks I used to chase come from it. I could ask my bro, he gon' stay 100 with me. I know what they talking about now, and my brody, he got principles, don't often back down. And I think they gon' tell me when I'm off the track now, but as for right now, man, I'm off in this. About to set it off in this, ayy. We don't often get missed, at least not how we used to. In the old days, keep rock what we grew to. And they all say, you could put a million on us, you could put a million on us. I could keep it really honest. They with you, but see they really on us. You could put a million on us. If you're wondering what may come from it, once May comes, then we graduate for the summer. Till then, lock in, watch the cake come from it. Pray to God we break 100, and once you get it poppin', watch the hate come from it. Chicks I used to chase come from it. I could ask my bro, he gon' stay 100 with me. I know what they talking about now, and my brody, he got principles, don't often back down. And I think they gon' tell me when I'm off the track now, but as for right now, man, I'm off in this. About to set it off in this, ayy. We don't often get missed, at least not how we used to. In the old days, keep rock what we grew to. And they all say, you could put a million on us, you could put a million on us. I could keep it really honest. They with you, but see they really on us. You could put a million on us. You could put a million on us. You could put a million on us. I could keep it really honest. They with you, but see they really on us.
Right, I see a few coming in, but looks like y'all need one more song's worth to make this happen. So get out there, find some UI sketches. One more song and then we're coming back.
Please let me know what type of voodoo magic trick I gotta do in order to see you before I leave this state. Just let me know what's the procedure to book an appointment with you.
I know that you've been waiting on me, I'm out front. I know you're sick of playing these games, I'm about done. I could turn it up a couple of thousand. Your man saying something She's a hometown baby. Could you put your phone down, maybe? You been showing out lately. She just wanna spend a little quality time. I 6'5" on a late night drive, and I'm going about 80. Maybe I've been going about it all wrong. Sometimes I just need someone to call on. Need someone to what I'm gonna do when they all gone. I know that you've been waiting on me. I'm out front. I know you're sick of playing these games.
All right, 1 minute left. Get those uploaded. Uploaded.
Your man saying something, but he ain't about nothing. How come? Don't talk like that when you know the outcome. She been waiting till I drop. Let her play the album. Gon' play that. Gon' play that. I was thinking about you when I made that. I was thinking about girl, got a girl, got a girl, got a girl, got a girl.
All right, hopefully y'all have had time to do this. Yeah, somebody's asking, are we going to get copyright struck? Usually if we just play music, especially if it's not like the biggest song in the world, then we're okay, but I think we're okay. All right, anyway, we're going to look at some UI sketches right here. Let's go through a few. Here is a few examples. All right, this one I would call, we're gonna talk about what these are, but you know, and we're gonna talk about names for these, but these names aren't exactly like canonical, meaning I'm not gonna ask you like, is this an X type of diagram on a quiz probably. I just want you to know basically what kind of information these things are conveying. So this is a app, and it is mainly conveying what I would call wireframe information. Shows you where things are and how the layout is. It doesn't look like it shows you how to get between pages. Okay, so this is more of a wireframe / layout. All right, next up is this one, and again, I think this is pretty much a layout one, a wireframe layout one, but it has a little bit more graphical information on it, so it's a little bit more than a wireframe. And this one, this is again just kind of a layout one. Here we have a higher fidelity drawing of the app. So this is something that you might put in front of a user. It looks like it might even be a paper prototype or a user story kind of situation. So like, this is the first thing, this is the second thing, this is the third thing. It's a little more realistic, which is only useful if you're trying to put it in front of users so they can give you feedback. Here is a great layout one. I really like this layout one because it has a grid, underlying grid that shows you where to put things so they line up with each other. That's very important in making a very aesthetically pleasing app. Again, this is a wireframe kind of thing, very small though. This is a classic wireframe. You can see how they even use like just X's, and that, you know, corresponds to different things. So like, for instance, there's a logo here, but they just put a big X. That's a classic convention in wireframes. We'll talk about conventions in just a second. Here is some software that has been used to create a bunch of prototypes of something, and creating prototypes with software is excellent. All right, here's another one that is more of what I would call like a flow chart. So you can see each page is a diagram of its own, which is great. But then when I press next, I go over here to this, or when I press back, I go over here to this. And this allows you to figure out almost like a choose your own adventure chart is what I would call it. So you can figure out how the app works when you do different things. Very cool. This one looks like it is just a wireframe layout with a little additional detail around the design, like the splash page and whatnot. This one is a inside of a UI prototyping app. We have a pretty high fidelity prototype and links between pages. When you press this button, it may even take you over here. I'm not sure how high a fidelity prototype this is, but in some prototyping software, you can press play and then it'll simulate the software for you. All right, here's another one that's kind of wireframe. And here is a kind of a wireframe one, but you can see they also have the links between them, which is more of a what I would call a layout or choose your own adventure diagram. That's great. Here we have an interesting juxtaposition of the first paper sketch and then a mock-up in a UI software, so you can see how it started and how it's looking. That's great. And another wireframe layout, a flowchart, choose your own adventure, whatever you want to call it. Great. Another layout one, another flowchart one, a layout kind of wireframe one. This is almost like a user story one because it's telling you, hey, this is how the whole thing is going to go. So that's an interesting kind of different. It looks very similar to the others, but it's more of a user study than a flowchart. Flowcharts have different directions you can branch in. This just has one user flow. So this is more of like a user story than, again, a flowchart. Here we have higher fidelity. I'm not even sure if this is UI. Oh yeah, this is UI stuff, but it's higher fidelity drawings, which you would want to use if you put stuff in front of users or if you're in front of clients. Again, a great flowchart one, and a flowchart one that's in some kind of UX prototyping. So we've looked at a bunch of these. I think you get the idea. What I want you to do is keep this link because that will help you in the future when we have to make some of these apps. You can go back and look at these collected examples, and I know that these are good examples. Almost all of those that we looked at were good examples. So keep this collection. It'll help you when we move forward. Somebody's asking, what is the main difference between flowchart and wireframe? Wireframe usually, I'm just referring to a single page. Wireframe is usually a single page, and it just uses boxes and lines to show the basic layout of the page. Wireframes can appear in a flowchart because there is maybe 2 wireframe or really 3 or 4 wireframe pages, and they're connected via navigation links. Okay, so a wireframe is just part of a flowchart in many cases. The point that I wanted you guys and gals to get from that exercise is that there are many different types of sketches that you'll use, although you could see they tend to be only a few different that we see over and over again, but there are several different ones. For instance, just drilling down on the wireframe, just to give you the definition, this is balsamic mockups, which is a popular wireframing tool, and you can see it allows you to lay out stuff on the page. You can use these X's for an image, a box for input, buttons, things like that. But you can see it's not emphasizing color or design, it's more emphasizing layout. Now, when you're drawing these things, there's a lot of conventions. A lot of conventions that people use. For instance, some people use this X convention as an image so they don't have to draw the image, or they'll use like a play button in a box for a video. And so just be aware of some of these conventions. They're all super straightforward, other than a few of them like the main navigation looking like that or breadcrumbs looking like that. You just need to be aware that these conventions exist. If you see something like this that you weren't sure what it is, well, that's breadcrumb navigation. Or you see something like that, that's main bar navigation. If you see lines, that's text. Pretty straightforward stuff, but you need to know there are conventions and you will see them in these drawings. Somebody's asking, are layouts basically more detailed wireframes? Wireframes and layouts are essentially the same thing. I would not make a distinction between layouts and wireframes. They are the same thing. Just laying out exactly where different things should be on the page. Now, We've already gone over this, but I want to give you this link really quick just so we can look at it together. Oops. Well, I guess that is now forbidden. That is bizarre. Huh. Let's see if I can find it this way. Man, that's a bummer. Let's see if that exists at all. There we go. Here is the poster that I was trying to show you. There we go. This is a great resource for you. You should check it out. And it just kind of goes over some of the different things. For instance, paper prototyping, like we saw in the video, user flows or flow charts, whatever you want to call them, which we were just talking about. Storyboarding, which allows us to tell the story of how our user is going to use our app. And where is our... I don't see wireframing on here, but it just shows you a little bit of an overview of some of the different diagrams that we're going to... there's wireframing. I knew that would be there. So it gives you a good resource to refer back to. Wireframing, paper prototyping, user flow, and storyboarding are the ones you want to pay attention to. Those are kind of the most distinct ones. But the rest of these are interesting too. But again, wireframing, paper prototyping, user flows, and storyboarding. Those are the ones you want to pay attention to. Okay, I'm going to have to skip this because we're running out of time. All right, so if you're getting an error when you go to that page, just start here and you can find the poster there. You can go ahead and watch this video on your own if you'd like to. But I just want to kind of summarize what we talked about today really quickly before we go ahead and make groups. Prototyping and sketching, especially sketching, is a good, meaning you should do it first step. There are several different ways to sketch, as we've gone over, several different types of sketches. Sketching is very powerful. It saves you a lot of time later on. We're going to make you sketch in this class, but in general, if you sketch early in your project, you won't have to do as much correcting things later. And sketching is cheap. It's a lot cheaper to fix things in a sketch than it is to go back and fix things later. All right, that's sketching. That's the lecture for today. Now, what I want to say is for today, y'all are going to be making groups. Here's the link. And you're going to be, you're just going to have to go on Slack and message each other, and you are making groups of 4. You have to come up with a team name and get 4 people in your group and put them in that Excel sheet. You will be getting 1% of your project grade for completing that by end of day today. So please go ahead and start completing that. Find groups. I'd encourage you to talk to each other in Slack or even right here on the chat if you want to. But you're going to be forming your own groups up, and it says you need to request your own access. Let me make sure that I have given you guys and gals access. You will need to use your VCU account to edit it. Yeah, anyone in the group from Virginia Commonwealth University can edit this. So you should be able to edit it. Let me know. Please let me know if you're using your VCU login, if you can edit that sheet. Will be 4 people in the group. Can anybody with their VCU login edit that sheet? You will need to use your VCU login. Okay, thank you. I will do one more thing to share it. Sorry about that. Let me fix this thing. Oh man. There it is. Anyone with the link. Okay, there you go. Anyone with the link should now be able to edit it. All right, now try. Sorry about that. Stupid Google things. There you go. You should be able to log in now. I think because you guys are VCU students, not VCU employees, you weren't able to access it. All right. So anyway, groups of 4. Get your groups up there by end of day today. One note about groups before you start making groups. Make sure that you get people that can program on your team. If everybody is only focused on the aesthetics or let's say the art of the project, then it may be difficult to have a successful project because you also need to make sure that this app works. So you need a balance between people that are interested in pure UX and they aren't that into coding, and people that just love coding and aren't into UX. You're going to need both types of people on your team. If you get 4 artists on your team, it's going to be rough. Okay, so you definitely want to get technical people and UX people all on the team. However, everybody's going to be coding. And that brings me to my final point for today. And somebody's asking, how do I get on the Slack? You just get on the VCU Slack and you can just join the, you can just join that and join our class, which is UX 2020. Let me put that link in the chat. There is the VCU Slack, CS Slack. Now, what was I wanting to say? With groups, you need people that are technical. Also, yeah, the final point. If you don't know how to code in Android, okay, if you do not know how to code in Android, meaning you have never made an Android app before, which potentially is most of you, you really, really should do Code Academy Android tutorials. You will need to be making an app this semester, and if you don't know, I'm not going to teach you how to make a simple app in Android. That's outside the scope of this class. However, don't worry, there's an easy way to catch up if you don't know how to make Android app, and that is to use Code Academy's Android tutorials. Now, this will cost you, I don't have a textbook in this class, so this will potentially cost you if you need to catch up. I think it's $40 for a 1-month subscription. I'd encourage you just to get it today and do the tutorial for for the next week. I think you can even get a 1-week free trial and do the tutorial on Android app development. That's what you need to do in order to be a good contributor to your group project. All right, that's going to be it for today. I'm going to stick around right in Menti for just a sec if you have any questions, but otherwise that is it for the lecture today. You guys go ahead and make groups and put them in there by end of day. That's 1% of your project grade. Get in there and make your groups. Otherwise, I will see y'all on Friday. You can, of course, put in questions if you have them right here. Somebody's asking, is React Native an option? Somebody is really into React Native, I think, because somebody asked this on Monday. Yes, of course, you can make, you can use whatever technology you want to make an app. I don't care, but it has to work on Android, and you have to deploy it on be able to deploy it on the Android store. So as long as you can do that, go for it. Somebody's asking, are we going to be discussing Google's dark theme guidelines in this class? We will discuss UI guidelines, and potentially we might even discuss Google's guidelines for making dark theme. But I can't say specifically that I haven't planned to discuss those specific guidelines specifically. But they are a good example of UI guidelines. And somebody's asking, what is our class's Slack group name called? It is UX 2021. UX Class 2021. UX Class 2021. All right, and I'm not seeing any more questions, so I will see y'all again on Friday. Have a good one.